Hey guys, Jay Foster, one half of Locked On Blue Jackets here. We're trying something a little bit different today. I have been doing a ton of draft profiles, draft scouting reports, talking to a bunch of prospect guys over the last couple of months to try and prepare for the upcoming NHL draft. And I thought, hey, let's try and put something all in one place. So this is the Locked On Blue Jackets almost top 32, but not quite, prospect in the draft. Basically, it's a ranking of all of the profiles that I've done up to this point. There are a couple of notable names missing. So please don't yell at me if, a player that you really like and you think should be in the kind of the top 20 is there. It's just that I didn't get a chance to do a profile on him. So that's what this is. And we're going to start with the obvious. We're going to start all the way at number 1, and then we're going to go through all the way through to 29. These are all clips from episodes of Locked On Blue Jacket. I'm going to link the playlist in the episode notes below, so you can go back, and if you want to listen to more about a certain prospect, I would suggest, for example, Leo Carlsson. You can do that. You can find all of those in the episode description. Like I said, these are all from the time I recorded them. So a couple of the older videos are kind of from the February, March time. So some of them are kind of a little bit outdated with stats and stuff, but I still think this is a really, I don't know, I think this is fun. I have enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed making it. It took me a while to put it together, and I am excited that I managed to do it just in time for the draft. So I think with all of that, I am going to just let the draft play, and we'll take it away with my number 1 ranked player in the NHL 2023 entry draft. Connor Bedard, how good is he?
He is certainly, I think, one of the most dangerous offensive players we've seen, and at least in the years I've been doing really detailed data work and everything, he is for sure the best player I've seen in the years I've done, which is since 2020. I remember watching Jack Hughes. I think there are certain things that Jack Hughes brings that Connor Bedard doesn't, but there are lots of things that Connor Bedard brings that I think Jack Hughes either has taken a long time to figure out and get to hit on his level, but he's still not there. I go as far back as like an Austin Matthews as like the last sort of Connor Bedard-esque level prospect we're talking about here. There's just, once the puck's in the offensive zone especially, there's just so much that he does so well. He transports it up the ice extremely well at the junior level, and I feel like he'll do it at the NHL level really well as well. There's just so much that he does so well. And again, like once you're in the offensive zone, I think we saw at the World Juniors, like once he has some better teammates with him, he's just like, it seemed like every single time he touched the puck, he did something that could have led to a scoring chance or did lead to a scoring chance. And so that's rare, right? And I think that that's kind of what sets him apart.
I always forget how tough the KHL is, especially for young players. Because I was looking at like his stats earlier, and I was like, oh, he's only got 10 points in I think 16 games, or 10 points in 19 games with Sochi. But like, and I felt this is something we talked about last year as well, and not to just rehash conversations every year, but the KHL I feel like doesn't like to play its young players, and so having a player that is producing basically at all when is he even 18 yet? Like he's he turned 18 a couple of months ago.
Yeah,
it's impressive to have a young player even getting KHL time, I feel like.
and that's the big thing is, I like you said, you don't want to rehash this conversation every year, but I think it deserves being mentioned every year. Young players, 17, just turned 18 years old, playing in professional leagues, whether it's the Liga in Finland, the SHL in Sweden, the KHL in Russia, or even the VHL, it's not easy. These are kids playing against men. I remember one prospect telling me a couple of years ago when I was interviewing them that like he was laughing because he was talking to a teammate that had a child the same age as him. It's just one of those things where it's like that's not a normal thing for these guys to be playing against. You can have a guy like Matvei Michkov go down to the junior level in the MHL, but he's just going to absolutely torch that league. It's not even fair. Last year in the MHL as a D-1, he had 38 points in 22 games. He was a goal a game at that level. You don't need him there anymore. The VHL level this year, he's over a point a game with 10 goals and 4 assists. The KHL level this year since the move, he's been really good. He's been about half point a game. Those are really good numbers for a player his age. At the end of the day, he's certainly not a perfect player. Like I said, there's a ton of flaws, but this is an incredibly high upside offensive player. Don't ask him to play. Don't ask him to play defense. There's a reason he's a winger and he's never once been considered a center. But he's got a lot of fun ability in his game, both as a puck mover in the offensive zone, both as a shooter. This is a guy that could score 30, 40 goals at the NHL level if he kind of refines certain things in his game in terms of habits he has.
Tony Ferrari here to come and talk to us a little bit about Adam Fantilli and what kind of game he has, because I feel like it's a very fun one.
Yeah, he's a fun player. He's one of my favorite players in the entire draft. I've talked to him a number of times over the last few years, and every time I talk to him, I just realize how much smarter this kid is about the game of hockey and how just dialed in he is. At the end of the day, I think this guy is going to be a really good NHLer, a guy that can play at both ends of the ice. And I've said it a few times, but outside of this draft and then going back to maybe 2015 and 2016 where Connor McDavid and Austin Matthews were drafted, Adam Fantilli would probably be right up there with the first overall pick, probably easily taking the cake for most years. I think Jack Hughes would have given him a run, but for the most part, this is a guy that's a first overall talent.
Yeah, for sure. And I know everyone was really itching to kind of jump on is Fantilli gonna contest for first overall this year? And I feel like the World Juniors kind of put an end to that. But this kid is, I feel like every time his name comes up, there's another like highlight reel, or he's had another like 4-point game or something for Michigan. So like, what should we expect from this kid when he steps on the ice?
Well, I think he's going to go back to Michigan, if I'm not mistaken, for next season. I think he's going to play one more year there, come out at the end of the year, kind of similar to the way Kent Johnson, Owen Power did last year. Same with Matthew Beniers. And then he'll take his full rookie season in his D+2 season. But I think this is a guy that once he gets to the NHL, he's going to be an immediate impact two-way player, the kind of the way Matthew Beniers is. But he has a lot higher of an offensive upside. He's got an outstanding shot, a really good shot from all over the ice, plays with a high level of skill. He's able to kind of pull the puck in. I know everyone likes to joke about Connor Bedard and his toe drag release, but Adam Fantilli has that in his game as well. He's got the shooting angles and different ability to kind of manipulate the puck in the way he's shooting, whether it's off his front foot, his back foot. He's leaning off to one side. He's able to do it off balance. He does a little bit of everything as a goal scorer, and as a playmaker, he's really developed this year in particular. I think coming to Michigan, he kind of realizes I have talent around me. And it's not that he didn't with Chicago Steel. That's obviously one of the best junior teams in the world. But he's noticed, like, I've got these players that are a little bit more mature. These guys are a little bit more pro-style players that are able to kind of play the game that I'm looking to play. And he's done a really good job of setting them up. I think him and Gavin Brindley, since they come back from the World Juniors, have been on an absolute tear together. I think Brindley has almost 15 points in the 8 games. And I think Fantilli has 20 or something around that number, if I'm not mistaken. So the way they've been tearing up the NCAA over the recent stretch of play has been pretty fun to see. And there's a reason at the end of the day, Fantilli is the highest scoring college player as a draft eligible since Paul Kariya, basically 30 years ago. A couple guys in the 80s that also did it, but all time he's 5th. He's doing it at over his scoring rate is at 1.88 per game. And Jack Eichel, who is a player that everyone gushed over in his college year, was only at 1.78. So it's still just everything this kid does seems to surpass everyone else around him.
So, Patrick, what can you tell us about Leo Carlsson?
Well, I think first and foremost, I think he will go top 3. I look forward to seeing him having a good under 18 tournament coming up as well. People forget that he plays against men. He plays professional hockey at the moment. So if you look at the stat line and compare that to phenoms like Bedard and Fantilli and others, it's not going to be as impressive maybe, but 19 points, about 15 minutes a game. What is it? 30 games, 33 games,
36 games so far this
36
season.
Games, yeah. So I think, like, let's keep it real. It's he's not playing on the first line. He's not playing, heavy minutes. A lot of talk has been said has been about he's not playing center at the moment, and what teams do with young players when they get up in SHL is they prepare them by playing center and playing them on the wing and doing certain assignments as center. So he is playing center during some shifts and etc. But he's not playing center like Connor Bedard in juniors. And you have to remember that when you look at his stat line and trying to project his numbers. But he's big, he's smart, he's strong. He's the archetype for a center that any team wants. And he worst case, I spoke to a pro scout just a couple of days ago, and we're talking about Carlsson, and we were both saying like he's going to be a center, but if worst comes to worst and you don't develop him fully, he's going to be an awesome winger.
Zach Benson is a legit top 5 guy. So what can you tell me about him?
Zach Benson, as I referred to like throughout the last couple of years, is I call it like, and every time you go see him, you're going to see the hockey school of Zach Benson. And what I mean by that is that the little habits, the little things that players can do well to just maximize their efforts as far as point totals and forecheck and supporting play and all of those sorts of things. Zach Benson does it about as well as anyone I've ever seen at the junior level. And so the reason that he's been able to gather as many points as he has is because those finer details of the game, he does all of them. And so, when you think of a guy that's putting up as many points as he is, it's like, does he have the best shot on his team and is the power play sniper? No. Is he the long puck carrier, stretch carrier through the neutral zone? No. He's just the most efficient player that you can think about.
What can you tell us about Smith?
Smith is fascinating. I love to watch him play. He is probably the most creative playmaker in the entire draft. Like, just the way that he's able to process things as they go on, the ability to change angles on his feet and just sort of change his view of the ice to look for secondary passing options that are in wide open space where goalies aren't. I mean, he drives a lot of offensive production just because of how he sees the ice and how creatively he manages himself relative to defenders and where he's putting pucks and how he uses his line mates. He's also a pretty good shooter. That helps too, for sure. Like, he's pretty good at that too. But, once if you let Will Smith enter the offensive zone with control of the puck, which he does extremely effectively, because of his skill and just the evasiveness he's got, like, you're going to have problems. Even when you think you're on top of him, he'll spin off pressure. He'll use his stick skill to sort of manipulate the puck through pressure, look for secondary passing options, pull pucks into new passing lanes, and just make plays. Like, I think he's a big reason why guys like Gabe Perreault and Ryan Leonard have such high point totals, especially Gabe Perreault. Like, I like Gabe Perreault just fine, but it's a lot of stuff happens from either Will Smith taking the puck in the offensive zone and finding Gabe Perreault somehow by the side of the net with a wide open net, or Gabe Perreault hitting Will Smith with a pass entering the offensive zone and the same thing happening. It's a very he just has this sort of magic way of manipulating the puck and playing around with it and creating plays in the offensive zone that are like, you don't see them coming, and then he pulls them off, and you're going, okay, like, I kind of see where this guy's going. He's not a perfect player. I personally, like, he's not my top rated NTDP guy. I mean, if you draft him top 5, top 10, I definitely think you've got at least a really, really productive winger, maybe, I would say. Like, he's a guy who will be absolutely disgusting on a power play. One of these guys who I think will be able to thread pucks through sort of penalty kill formations and just being able to move and shake a little bit to create a little bit of space or a little bit of a gap and move pucks through traffic a little better. At 5-on-5, though, I mean, he plays center. He's playing center all year. I kind of struggle with his game off puck. He kind of sits back and sort of lets the game happen around him, and and he's not very involved in offensive transitions. He kind of leaves that up to guys like Ryan Leonard, who are a lot quicker in a straight line, or Gabe Perreault, who has a bit more sort of skill in transition in terms of getting around guys that are pressuring him. Whereas Will Smith, like, he has a tendency to overhandle and overthink things, and doesn't have a tremendous amount of speed to sort of get the puck up the ice himself. But if the puck's in the offensive zone, like, to me, if you don't get like Connor Bedard in the draft and you want maybe not the same player, but a similar type of player, maybe without the shot, but you have a playmaker's instinct where you just put him in the offensive zone and you'll get points out of him, then Will Smith might not be the worst option. He turns the puck over in a good way. I mean, like, he causes turnovers in the offensive zone a lot. He's extremely efficient passing and carrying the puck up the ice as well, even if it isn't the highest sort of value thing. Like, a lot of his data seems to line up a lot with Logan Cooley from last year, from what I can recall. So that's the kind of player you might be looking at here.
But looking
Tell me about
this,
Axel Sandin Pellikka. What kind of player is a team going to be getting with him?
First and foremost, you're dead last, or not dead last, but you're almost dead last in in the standings. And if you get first overall, you're not picking Axel Sandin Pellikka no matter what. let's start with that. So
no, but the Blue Jackets might have more than one first round pick, so
yeah.
I could see them picking him up at a later date.
Yeah,
maybe.
You would have to take him at top 10 though. I can definitely see him going top 10, and the question is that the kind of pick you're getting? For Montreal, it's obviously a little bit of a bonus having Florida's pick, and Florida is doing not as good as they thought they were going to do. So realistically, I would assume Blue Jackets getting a draft pick or next year's draft pick for a good player going into a good team that is about to compete. But yeah, let's say you're dropping down to fourth. You're probably not going to take Sandin Pellikka anyway. But depending how the other teams tank, because that's what it's going to come down to, you will see the different solutions. Sandin Pellikka is probably the defenseman you will get, and you would take. And I tend to compare him a little bit to Philip Broberg. They're same kind of style when they're playing. Obviously, the similarities are so similar in many ways because they play for the same club in Sweden, etc., etc. But I think the new coaching team with Sandin Pellikka, I trust them a lot more. I'm a huge fan of Robert Olsson, who's running Skellefteå right now. He's managing the expectations quite smartly, playing him in good situations. So it's not just like a run and gun as it was a little bit with Broberg. But I see them in some ways as a similar kind of player. You will need time to development, and it will take about let's say 4 years to properly have him ready for the NHL. It's not that you take a player and get him into the NHL as you would probably do with Bedard, obviously, and Carlsson is probably going to go more or less straight in or a short time. He has the size, he has the skill, he's played pro. There are a couple of others that might go. I'm though cautiously optimistic to see these clubs going into to maybe taking a little bit slower of an approach and not putting the players into the NHL directly. Pellikka, smart, skilled. I shouldn't say small, but he's average size.
He's taller than me, but so are many NHL players. He's 5'11", I believe, which is small for a defenseman.
Indeed, but also there's room for growth there, and you know that he's what, 17? Has he turned 17 yet? I don't know.
Yes, I believe so. I feel like Owen Power really kind of skewed the ideal for what young defensemen are like, because he's 6'4".
Yeah,
he was 6'4" as an 18-year-old, which seems unfair. So
we also have the other skewing the data right now, which is Lane Hudson, obviously.
Yes.
so you'd never know.
He's somewhere in between those two guys.
You saw a lot of his skills during the World Juniors. He got that driving the play, getting up there, quarterbacking the power play, has a decent shot. He can place it with accuracy. Maybe the speed isn't up there yet. That is something you want to develop. I would pair him with a defensive defender, like an all-round defensive kind of player, because you want someone with smartness to understand how Pellikka is going to drive the play as well.
When Oliver Moore steps on the ice, what kind of player is a team getting?
In a word, speed. He is speed. That's about what I can say. He's just buzzing everywhere, left and right. One thing I was concerned about at the start of the year was that I felt like his brain wasn't keeping up with his feet, because he's extremely quick. He looks like he's shot out of a cannon on every shift, and it's really fun to see. But there were some moments where I was kind of iffy on the way that he was able to string together play, just process at that high speed that he's at. But the more I watched him and the more the year went on and he improved, it was really obvious that this was a player who's equally able to, dominate the mental side of the game and process at a fast enough speed that you're not getting a Michael Grabner out of him. A guy who's going to be, going really quickly on breakaways, getting 5, 6, 7 breakaways a game, but won't be able to convert on any of them because his hands can't keep up, that kind of thing. That's what I really like about Oliver Moore. Just the intelligence that goes with that speed. He's got great hands, he's got a decent shot. But what really stands out the most about his puck skills is his playmaking. He's able to connect plays really well, really aware of where his teammates are, and keeps their routes in mind when he's skating around the ice. And he's comfortable kind of readjusting. So he's not kind of stuck on one thing, and if that thing doesn't work out, he still tries it as like a Hail Mary attempt. He's comfortable adapting what he's trying to do to the circumstances around him and how they unfold. So yeah, you're getting a really smart and really fast player in Oliver Moore. A guy who's going to just dominate transitions on a regular basis. He's not my favorite player out of the NTDP, but he's up there.
Ryan Leonard, when he steps on the ice, what kind of player are you getting?
You're getting power, skill, speed. It's such like a basic set of tropes, especially for a guy who, if I'm remembering correctly, he's 5'10", 5'11", in that range. Like, he's not a big bruiser power forward, but he plays like a modernized power forward. He's all about getting that inside positioning and getting into middle ice. He has a boom of a shot, which can be easily used in motion, which is what elevates it kind of above a lot of the contemporaries he has around him in the goal scoring department. He is blinding with it. I don't think that's the most accurate phrase, because that kind of makes it seem like it's a pure power thing. It's a lot of it's done in the release itself because it's so quick, and he doesn't break stride, and he kind of can shoot from these awkward contorted positions, which are the ones where goalies aren't really set because they time their sets with like a shooter, so they don't settle down until then. So obviously NHL goalies are exceptional and break that convention, but that's okay. Leonard's a great shooter and he will score goals in the NHL. He doesn't go like too crazy with anything. This is a big part of why Ryan Leonard is flying up draft boards.
Let's start off with the basics. Let's start off with, when Gabe Perreault gets on the ice, what kind of player is a team getting?
Right now, they're getting one of the highest impact players in the draft. When he's playing against his own age competition, Gabe Perreault is nothing short of a monster. He is probably one of the best players in the draft, regardless of league or location anywhere, in terms of making the right decision within a timing window. He gets himself into the right spot. Will Smith might, drag a defender out away, and the little pocket of space opens up, and Perreault's already in that pocket of space before the other team is really expecting it to even be there. And then Smith's passing it back. Perreault's got the puck. He has space. He has time. Leonard's springing open somewhere else. Smith's already trying to get himself open. Perreault has space to work with. And then he's just making whatever the best play is. Like, he scored so many points because his ability to recognize the best play and execute it within these tight windows is sensational. He does a lot of the work with his hands. His set of hands is fantastic. He is really active with his feet, but he's not the most explosive skater. This is what you're going to keep hearing about Perreault, he's not a fast skater per se. He's not the best in terms of changing directions smoothly, but he gets the job done. It's more than serviceable to at least complement how he plays at this level. And everything else he does is just so smart and just so skilled that you're a fan every time you see him with the puck.
What kind of player is Dmitry Sudashev?
He's kind of a player that can do a little bit of everything, but he may not be elite at one category. Other than his skating, I think he's one of the best skaters in the draft. The guy, he's 6'4", and he's extremely mobile, both moving laterally, forwards, backwards. I got a lot of time for his skating and his ability to kind of escape the forecheck, kickstart the breakout by, carrying pucks out of his zone or closing gaps and quickly rubbing players out along the boards and stealing the puck away. I mean, his skating is his biggest asset, and he is going to attract a lot of potential buyers in the NHL because of his combination of his reach and his skating and mobility. It is honestly fun to watch. Now, he's got a bit of a physical edge. He doesn't use it as consistently as I would like him to. And offensively, his numbers don't stand out right now, but he has a lot more to give. I mean, I'm surprised when you watch him play. I'm surprised he's not closer to, a point a game player in the junior league in Russia, because he's very active in the offensive zone. He'll play give and goes off the line and push down towards the hash marks, and he'll look towards the slot to make a pass or a shot redirect. So he's got the offensive instincts to potentially run a power play. He's probably more of like a potential PP2 kind of guy, but I see more upside as him as a penalty killer because of his reach. He can close lanes, passing or shooting lanes quicker, and he's also really fearless in blocking shots. That's something I've loved about him, and loved at seeing him do that at the KHL level, is that he's not afraid to get into the shooting lanes and block shots, and that's something that I know NHL teams and coaches value extremely, that is something that they really value.
We're going to talk all about Gavin Brindley, who is for my money, one of the more exciting players in this draft, I think.
Undeniably. I love Gavin Brindley. I could talk about Gavin Brindley for days. This is one of the most fun players I have ever watched, and one of the most likable players I've ever followed. There is something so remarkable about the little hedgehog that is Gavin Brindley. He is officially 5'9". That's what I think his height comes in as. 5'9" is
on
what
paper.
I had.
He's 5'9", so I assume he's probably like 5'7.5" on a good day. But
Yeah, maybe
in skates,
maybe. I'll be devastated if the combine reveals something else. So Gavin Brindley is probably the best example in a while. Well, actually, Zach Benson is the best example in a while. But Gavin Brindley is the second best example in a while about how being small, when applied the right way, makes you super projectable to the NHL. This is that like Logan Stankoven style of play, or you're small and in their drafter, you see them like kind of getting into a lot of physical encounters when they're driving into the slot, and you're like, he's tiny, it's not going to work. But he's so skilled, and he's so shifty on his edges, and he protects the puck surprisingly well, and he's also just strong. He kind of like gets around, and Stankoven can just kind of like absorb pressure and just like kind of fly through gaps and turn off people, and nobody can really get their momentum on him to like hurt him. Brindley doesn't play like Stankoven, but he has that same style of pressure management. It's just he does entirely different things with it. Brindley is super aggressive on a forecheck, but not in like he's mindlessly aggressive. Like he's unbelievably calculated. He kind of like, he'll skate in super fast. He closes gaps really quickly. So he doesn't mind being a tiny little bit patient to let a guy think he has more space and then take it away from him. Being small, playing this style, mean he had to get super good with his stick. So stick lifts, stick steals, like just like little loose puck tips to kind of get it and then control it as soon as it pops out. These type of plays, they're all second nature. His skating, one of the best in the draft from anybody. Like, he's just like, he's an unbelievable skater. He's super quick. He gets a lot of speed right away. Even though he's not like explosive, it doesn't really matter because he's laterally explosive. So he may not like get like pure, like, oh, wow, he's gone in a straight line, but he kind of just goes on like an arc super quickly off one step. And you're like, oh, and he uses that to kind of like give him that extra bit of space that he lacks from his size when escaping pressure. And he's just okay with bigger players kind of coming in because he's small, he's strong, he's sturdy, he knows how to protect the puck, he knows how to like get people's momentum off of him, and he just takes off. Then out of nowhere, or not really out of nowhere, then out of development, Gavin Brindley started being like, all right, I'm just going to slowly become one of the draft's best offensive players throughout the draft year.
But let's start off with Danielson. What kind of player are teams getting when he steps on the ice?
First and foremost, they're getting a centerman. They're getting, because I think in this draft, there's a lot of times we talk about centermen who might not be centermen. He's a centerman. He's a player who excels with his fluidity and his transportation of the puck up the ice. He's a very efficient power play transition guy. He's one of those guys that when he's moving through the neutral zone, you want the puck on his stick because of the length of his stride, his reads on pressure, and the way that he can kind of accelerate and move the puck to his fullness of his reach. He gets the job done very, very effortlessly. There's times where it just looks like, okay, like it's just now you have the zone and he's just looking to settle the puck down, looking to set up the play, to set up the offense. He's big, he's big, he's smart. He has tons of finesse to his game as well. And so you're adding in a player that is a fluid skater, very big, mobile through the middle of the ice. And this season he's really worked on, especially when he's in motion, back checking with more consistency, bothering guys, stick lifts, really taking, responsibility for that for Brandon. So a finesse centerman, a very, very a finesse centerman with size.
When David Reinbacher steps on the ice, what kind of player are we getting?
David Reinbacher is a very, very good skater. He is a very strong defensive presence, and whichever team adds him is getting a high likelihood second pairing defenseman, which is a very valued commodity in the National Hockey League. And I can understand the frustration, especially in the context of the Montreal Canadiens and 5th overall. David Reinbacher is a tremendous prospect, but it is a question of who you'd be passing on to select him. And if you're passing on a player like Matvei Michkov, or I like Zach Benson and Oliver Moore a ton, it kind of makes it a bit more complicated as a draft pick in that slot. But I think that, at least in terms of prospect evaluation, we should try to separate those rumors and that frustration of draft slot from the player themselves, because David Reinbacher is a great prospect. And I currently have him ranked at, 17th overall on my board. And this is a strong draft class. So this is a player I like a ton. He is, again, as I said, a very strong skater. When he steps on the ice, you get a player with strong passing ability with the puck. Defensively, he makes excellent micro adjustments to get his stick in lanes, to make it difficult for players to get to the slot. He is very, very concentrated on protecting the slot first and foremost in his own zone. And that is an excellent habit for a defenseman to have. And my player comparable for Reinbacher at this stage is, ironically for Habs fans, Caden Gooley. This is a similarity in terms of the mobility and the powerful skating. I would substitute, like Reinbacher is a far stronger passer than Gooley was at the same stage in his career, but Gooley's also more violent. And when he goes and stops someone in transition, Gooley will throw the big hit. He doesn't chase them, but he will throw them. David Reinbacher is more of a suffocating transition defender where he tries to stop play by just forcing them into the boards rather than lighting them up with a massive hit, which is in many cases equally effective. It's just a different style of transition defending. And at the same time, both have really interesting toolkits. Like Reinbacher is a really strong passer, but his handling mechanics are quite flawed. He has a very locked top hand, and he kind of has his elbow above his shoulder on his top hand, which really limits his range of motion as a handler, which means that he's not overly deceptive, but he can use his reach to get around players and to kind of play keep away. But that kind of limits him as a puck carrier in transition. He's far stronger as a passer. And with Gully, you see a similar limitation in terms of, I guess, panicking under pressure in possession, where instead of drawing it in and exploiting pressure and to create openings, he kind of just flicks the puck into open ice to get out of that situation. And I think for both players, that kind of limits their offensive potential. So I don't think either is going to be a future top power play quarterback. I think both could maybe be decent enough on the second power play unit as a distributor rather than a creator. But yeah, Reinbacher's awesome. And I really enjoy watching him. He's put up decent numbers in the Swiss Pro League.
What should you, every time he steps out on the ice, what should you expect from a guy like Dvorsky?
Looking at him as a player, you want to look at his vision or see how he sees the ice and how he sees the other players on the ice as well. His passing is good. His shot is very good. Be it a wrist shot or a snap shot, both of them are good. He doesn't have a very heavy slap shot, but he's big. He's stand tall. He is the archetypical center you want in that regard. What he doesn't have as a center, what you're looking in at a center really is the defensive game and a little bit of the skating. So those things will stand out when he plays against men. And I think sometimes he's overconfident when he plays against his own age, which is easy to understand if you're top 10 in the draft or top 15 in the draft. So I respect that in some ways, but on the other hand, I understand it. I don't respect it, but I understand it. But I would have respected him more if he actually went in and just did everything he could in those games and showcased himself even more and didn't maybe take a shift off here and there. I do understand that you do that. I have never been on that level, but I can understand the point.
Yeah. Let's talk about Ethan Gauthier as a player. What's his best attribute? What's his worst attribute? And kind of what do you get from Ethan Gauthier as a hockey player?
Gauthier is a guy that I can fully understand why so many scouts have just fallen in love with him. He has a tremendous motor. He is a suffocating forechecker, relentless, both offensively and defensively, and that is a basis for a really fun player that a lot of scouts are always looking for. So along the same style of player, a guy that I like a lot more than Gauthier is Gavin Brindley. I'm a massive Gavin Brindley fan.
We love Gavin Brindley on this podcast.
But Ethan Gauthier has a similarly high motor. And I scouted him today in preparation for the podcast, and I bumped him up like 10 spots on my board. So I brought him up to like 40 on my board. But he's been a staple in my second round all year. And I have a few questions in terms of the pure upside. I don't. It's funny that we do both him and Reinbacher at the same time here, because Ethan Gauthier is also a really strong passer, but maybe lacks the playmaking tools to leverage that to a high level in the NHL. When he finds passing lanes, he can hit them beautifully. The issue is creating those chances and creating those openings. And it's kind of a trial and error thing with Gauthier on that front. But at the same time, he's far, far more than just a playmaker. So that's perfectly okay. He is a strong defensive player, consistently engaged. He needs to scan more consistently in his own zone, which he does pretty well offensively, but defensively, that kind of is hit or miss with him. And it means that opponents can kind of just slide into his blind spot and exploit the defensive structure that way. But considering that he's a pretty solid scanner offensively, I think that he can pretty easily develop those habits on the defensive side as well. And he's really well-rounded. He has a pretty good shot, especially on a one-timer. He has an above-average release, and he finds soft ice pretty well. I don't think he's overly dynamic. I think that would be one main limitation in this game. But you're getting a player who's a very, very straightforward bottom six projection with the possibility of leveraging the playmaking or passing game into a higher end playmaking style that could elevate him to a second line role. So you have a basis to develop him. And the fun thing with him is the team that drafts him will have a ton of options of how they really do plan on developing him in the future, because he has this well-rounded game with a couple really high-end tools like his motor and the passing, as I said. But teams could develop him into more of a power forward mold if they want to really encourage him to bulk up, and he'd have to add some balance and refine his puck protection mechanics a bit. But I could see a path for that. Or you could, if you want to, develop him as a goal scorer, because I think his shot and goal scoring instincts are good enough to leverage that. And at the same time, you could develop him as an energy guy, two-way energy winger, or a playmaker. You have a ton of options.
So what can you tell me about Brayden Yager as a player?
Well, it's so funny that you say that, because he's kind of waned on me. At the start of the year, I saw him as kind of a top 5, top 6 contender, a guy who's among the best in this draft class because, the goal scoring ability was there. He's got an NHL size, really, really solid on his feet, and he's able to, find space really effortlessly in the offensive zone. But the issue was I didn't really see much outside of that. And then he added some playmaking, and I was like, wow, okay, we've got a great goal scorer with decent playmaking. That's great. But the more I started to watch his game, the less I saw kind of the hints of processing and intelligence that I like to see from centers. He's also not the most defensively reliable. He's decent enough in his own zone that he's able to keep up with top sixes in the WHL, but I don't know if that's going to translate properly, if he's going to be able to stack his skills in order to make that work. But the main issue with Yager is skating. And usually when skating is the only issue a prospect has, I'm not too concerned, because we've got the improvements in skating have gotten so much more streamlined. Like, teams are a lot more better equipped to solve skating issues. But with Yager, it's not the only issue. If you had if he was a Zach Benson type, Zach Benson is extremely intelligent. He's one of the most intelligent prospects in the class. And he also has a terrible skating form. He concerns me a lot less. That's why I've got Benson 5th overall, and I've got Yager in the kind of the 15 to 20 range, is because Benson has so much intelligence that if you fix his skating, his brain's keeping up. I don't know if Yager, if you fix his skating, his brain's going to be able to keep up with his feet. He plays at the pace that he skates, and he's skating too slow. That's the concern for me. But with a player with that much skill, a player who's able to shoot the lights out, a player who's able to find a stick through a sea of skates like he does. I mean, yes, he plays on a very solid offensive team in Moose Jaw, the team that scores a lot of goals, but at the same time, he's at the center of a lot of those goals. So I think that the connection with Moose Jaw is kind of going to entice the Blue Jackets to go that route if he's available by then, because I think teams are still high on him, a lot more than the public scouting sphere is. But if he is available in that range, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see the Jackets go for him. They've probably seen a lot of him in the last year. So, yeah.
I want to talk about Andrew Cristall, who's playing for the Kelowna Rockets at the minute and has 84 points in 49 games, which is pretty darn good. He's another winger. He's another smaller player. But what can you tell me about Cristall?
So Andrew he's just always been small. And so even when he was drafted in the WHL, it's a fun kind of anecdote for people, but when they had the hub in the first, years of COVID, and the WHL got the hub going, they, normally players that are drafted in the first round, they have to get some sort of exception to be able to get into the league. And so, the talk was Bedard was going to have that exception, but nobody else. But because they because they could take the year because the players weren't playing U18, a lot of stuff wasn't going. They kind of made an exception for the first rounders and then a couple others kind of to get into the league. And so he comes into the hub, and I think he's like 5'7", 140 pounds, playing with these guys. And they were just like, he just has to stay out of trouble and not get hit. And like, then he can start making some plays. And that's what he did. He stayed out of trouble. He found his spots. And when he was on the sides, his vision, his playmaking, his hands are so good that even if he was just standing still receiving passes down low, he was facilitating in the middle. He's about as smart of a player as well. Like, they're different smarts, but both him and Zach Benson are just really smart. Zach is one that understands the details of the game as a two-way player. Andrew is one who he navigates space and puck control. And it's almost like it's almost like the ice is just a board that he can control. He understands where this momentum is coming from, where this momentum is coming from. He sees the little openings. He sees the opportunities. So it makes him about as efficient as a point getter as you can get, kind of at this level, not named Connor Bedard.
When Musty gets on the ice, what should fans expect to see from him? What kind of player is he?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me back on. With Musty, he's been a kind of a polarizing player for most of the year, dating back to his Hlinka Gretzky tournament. But, the biggest thing that, anyone will notice every time he steps foot on the ice is just his incredibly high skill level and his playmaking abilities. I mean, he's definitely probably in the top 5-7 playmakers in this draft. I can definitely get on board with people that have him in their top 5 for playmakers, because he just has an ability to kind of pull defenders towards him, open up lanes, or just slide slit passes through scenes that just not a lot of other players just wouldn't be able to do. So he's got that, that skill and that ability to kind of generate a lot of chances. And that also makes him a very key power play specialist. I mean, he's got a terrific shot. He doesn't utilize it a ton because he likes to set his teammates up more. But, when you have a guy who's 6'3" or 6'2" and over 200 pounds, whatever he's at, you expect, a big power forward kind of player. But you're getting more of a guy who's just extremely skilled, can create a lot of plays on the ice, and can just be a difference maker in the offensive zone.
Let's talk a little bit about Perreault first, and then we can kind of get more into the USHL as a league. What is Perreault like as a player? What kind of player are you getting in this kid?
Well, he's undersized. There's no getting around the fact that he's 5'8", maybe 5'9" if you want to be generous. He's 160 pounds. He's a guy that has the speed, has play at that level, and I think he has the feistiness too. There's a lot of things that I watch about his game where you look at for small players and you want them to play bigger than they actually are, and I think Jaden Perreault does a lot of that. He's an excellent forechecker. He establishes body position really well along the boards to win board battles against bigger players. And he kind of just gets under guys and outworks them. He's a firecracker with and without the puck. And in the neutral zone and offensive zone, he strips pucks like crazy. His defensive game in the actual defensive zone, once things kind of get set up and the other team's making plays in their set offensive scheme, then things can kind of break down defensively for him. But in the neutral zone, preventing breakouts and kind of preventing them from getting out of their defensive zone, he's really, really good at knocking down pucks, creating havoc, just pressuring guys and getting on the defenders trying to make the breakout pass. So he's really good there. And then he's got really good passing ability. He's a guy that I think, similar to Riley Heidt, is an excellent passer, really manipulative with the puck. He's put up big point totals this year, 72 points in 61 games, top 10 scorer in the WHL or the USHL, sorry, top six scorer actually. And this is a guy that I think showed everything you want to see in a smaller player. With that said, the stat card, the hockey card is still going to say he's 5'8". Teams are still going to shy away from that. And he's probably going to fall down the board further than he should.
let's talk about him because he was over a point per game in the MHL this season, which seems pretty darn good to me.
Okay. You are not going to find they don't make players this divisive out of nowhere. This is interesting. I have had conversations with people all year long about him, and the range of opinions I have heard stretches the whole spectrum of like, I have zero interest in drafting him and I'm ranking him strictly because like you can't not rank him. And then there's the I am obsessed with what he can be people. Was in the middle, and then I moved up towards the obsessed side, and then I fell way back, and then slowly creeped up, and then back, and then forward, then back, and now I'm forward again. I'm not joking. That has been the process. It's very interesting. So the MHL is a league where when you look at the production, players will look so much better than they are. And also at the same time, good players might not score. It's a really weird league. It is not structured in any way like pro hockey. It's one of the least projectable leagues I have ever watched. A lot of good individual talent are in it, though. It's not lacking for good players. It's just lacking for cohesion and making these players play together. It's extremely individualistic. Everyone kind of plays like they're Ilya Kovalchuk or Pavel Bure or Michkov or whatever. They have a lot of space and they like to just go all out with the highlights. And you can see some exceptionally frustrating things as a result of this. So Gulyayev kind of falls into this category a little bit in terms of where the production came from. Some of the points weren't so projectable. This has been a point that has been brought up against him. You don't draft Gulyayev for the raw scoring. It will likely come at the end of the process of what you draft him for, but if you draft him to make him a scorer, you likely ruin the player. He is the best skating defenseman you will find in this draft by a mile. Like, it's not even close. You don't get feet like this unless you draft them. Like, if this player makes it, it's because he's going to be a stud. Because coaches hate everything about the way he plays. So if he gets through anyways, it's true. He doesn't play a coach's game at all. So, like, if he gets through anyways, it's because he's already overcome a lot of issues. And when that day happens, like, you don't find players like him.
But what kind of player is Nadeau? What kind of player is a team getting if they draft him?
In one word, a goal scorer. He's got a top 5, maybe top 3 release in this draft class. Just fantastic mechanics and accuracy and volume and power. Everything about his shot is just so lovable. He's able to wire it right into the postage stamp, the top corner, no problem. But he's also very comfortable taking low shots below the blocker, below the glove, to beat goaltenders. He's got a knack for finding space off the puck as well. The comparative for him on Elite Prospects is Mike Hoffman. And I understand it, but I'd say that Nadeau has a bit more to his game than Hoffman. I feel like he's more intelligent, more refined, and more intense than Hoffman. Hoffman takes some shifts off. Hoffman often just pops up to score a goal, and then you don't see him again for the game. Whereas Nadeau is a lot more reliable. Well, at least he is at this level. And you can see the motor with him. You can see him able to, push the pace. He's comfortable pressuring defensemen below their hash marks and creating turnovers and all that stuff. But mainly what you're getting out of Nadeau is a premier goal scorer. And he's got great hands as well. An underrated passer as well. I feel like he's able to make those small give and go plays. It's not the type of guy who's going to fire pucks through 3 sticks and connect with teammates or anything like that. But he can play the short game really well. And usually his passing serves his shooting. He passes with the purpose of opening himself up for a shot, right? So you're getting a sniper out of Bradley Nadeau, a guy who's going to, at his best, if he works out the way we think he can, here at Dauber, probably a 35-40 goal scorer at his best. So he's the type of guy who's got some risk based on his size and his lack of physicality. He's not the strongest guy, and he's not really as good as a Jaden Perreault, for example, at winning board battles, despite his size, outworking opponents, anything like that. But he's just so good off the puck at finding space in the offensive zone, and his shot is just otherworldly. So you have a very hard time not seeing him score at least 30 at the NHL level if he works his way up to an NHL lineup.
Let's talk about Stenberg's, just game as a whole. What kind of player are you getting if you draft Stenberg?
Actually, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because Expressen, one of the top 2 newspapers, numbers-wise, maybe not quality-wise, just had a very good interview in regards to Otto Stenberg, and they are still considering Frölunda, that is still considering developing him as a center, which is not something maybe we saw as highly touted before the under 18s, but after the under 18s, there was a lot of talk about it. Right now, as development is at the moment, they are still considering him as a forward or as a wing, but he could be moved in with a better physique and with a better pace to his game. Because let's face it, he's played in the SHL for the full year or most of the year, 23 games, 7 minutes of time on ice on average. So it's all that. But really, he's a shooter first, and that's something that we might forget from time to time. He's strong with the puck. He has a fast release on his wrist shot. Sometimes he can be a little bit lax. I think it's because when I watched him in the under 20s playoffs, he played against peers, and it's not like you put all the national team players in one go as you do with in the US, and then you play college teams. But here you play actually regular season teams. There are 1 or 2 players that might be stars or future SHLers on each team, but the drop-off is quite big. So it might just be that coming down to playing the playoffs is sort of made him look a little bit more relaxed and I wouldn't say bad, but I expected a bit more, but it might just have been the surroundings as well.
When Luca Pinelli kind of gets on the ice for a game, what are you getting from him as a player?
You're getting great intelligence. I think he's a high-end thinker of the game. He's very comfortable slowing it down, going to the middle, but he's also got a great motor about him. He's got that combination with smarts and intensity that I really like. But the knockbacks on his game and the things that have kind of made him go down the rankings are mainly the fact that his puck skills are about average across the board. Usually he's able to compensate for that, especially at the OHL level, especially in the chair that he's in right now in Ottawa. He's well surrounded. He's got teammates that can push the pace for him, that can get around defenders. Mainly his job is to cut to the middle, draw them in, and then open up space on the flanks, which he does really well. It's just a matter of whether that's going to work at the NHL level. But what you're getting out of Fantilli is a very smart and very driven player who's constantly going to find the middle of the ice and constantly going to try to make things happen there.
Calum Ritchie steps on the ice.
Yeah.
What kind of player are we getting?
Grit, for sure, 100%. He's going to be running the opposing defense into the wall consistently and constantly. He loves to throw his weight around. He's got a nasty edge about him, but he's also incredibly smart. Really good decisions with the puck. Superb playmaker. Does great work with the puck as well. He's a bit of a very versatile player in terms of, I like to call those template players. I put Jaden Perreault in the same kind of boat where he's kind of a development team's dream in the sense that you can make so many different types of players out of him. He's good in so many different areas that you can pick and choose one of them and work it out. One thing with Ritchie is his skating is going to hold him back for a while, at least until it hits an NHL average. That's something that does need work in terms of his profile. But overall, I mean, he's really strong along the boards, really smart with the puck. He's comfortable hanging on to the puck for a second and then kind of deciding on which play to make. He doesn't kind of fire the puck through the first lane he sees or anything like that. He's very poised with the puck. So he's a unique profile. He's as close to Tom Wilson as you're going to get, essentially.
He's just not going to try and actively murder guys.
Yeah, that's one thing. I mean, even that's debatable, but, you know.
Let's talk about that. What kind of player is Samuel Honzek? What are teams getting if they draft him?
So right off the bat, you just have to understand he's huge. He is huge, and he has a very long skating stride. So for potential wise, like when you watch him move, there's some similarities like with a Nick Bukestad kind of player when he's out there, the way that he moves on the ice. He's just very big, very lanky. And not only that, but he is very, very smart in his puck protection. And so Samuel Honzek's best ability right now is being able to protect the puck until an outlet is there. So he got a lot of his points for Vancouver by just people simply not being able to take the puck from him. And it wasn't like he was setting up premier plays. He was just continuing them. It was just when they wanted to get the puck from Samuel Honzek, when he was bursting into the zone and he felt pressure on the side, he would move to a wider base stance. He would split his stride and he would protect his puck at the reach. And he's a player that has a lot of great vision. And so whether it was a simple back pass, a pass across the zone, a cycle around, a play to the point, he kept possession. He settled down the play for his team, and he gave them opportunities to establish position in the offensive zone. And that will be an avenue that can continue up pro ranks. He's going to be a very hard player to take the puck from when he moves to that split stride.
Why is he so interesting?
Because nobody knows what he is, including me or all of the scouts, because it's so rare to find a player who actually is this distinctive and unique, but has the frame of a monster. He's 6'5" and over 200 pounds, right? And second you hear that, you're picturing a certain type of player who plays a certain type of way. He does not play that way. That is not his game. He has unbelievable skill, and not like he's got crossbody skill, which for every little bit of reach you get, crossbody skill becomes more and more and more important. So he can be sitting there fully extended on the forehand and just taking up a monstrous amount of space. And then he can pull that puck back with precision and fully extend to his backhand on the other side perfectly. And he can do all of this while moving and changing directions and using pivots and cuts. And it's all unbelievable. He just is so I won't want to say unbelievably inconsistent, but he has games where you were puzzled with how he uses his tools and other games where you were left in awe. I did not rank Daniil Boo at one point in my top 64 this year. It was around the mid-season mark. I had 5 or so games under the belt, and he had maybe impressed me on like 10 shifts. He had some lowlights that I could not believe. And I just sent I don't understand what he's processing when he's on the ice. Like, I just don't see what's going on. Then I stopped paying attention. And about 2.5 months ago, I was told, check out this game from Daniil Boo. It's the most outrageous thing you'll ever see. I immediately went, how bad did he play? Then I went and watched and saw what was, to this moment, one of the best games from any player in the draft by far, to the point where I was like jaw on floor, threw my whole read on him in the trash based off the one game alone. I was 6 shifts into it and I was like, all right, I need to
I gotta start
new eyes. New eyes. Everything is being reset with Daniil Boo. This is incredible. Edward Chalet has such a ridiculously wide range of where he can go in the draft, to the point where I actually don't even know where to hazard a guess. Like right now, according to Bob's last list, he was around the mid first. I think might have even been challenging for the top 10. In that
I believe Bob McKenzie has him 12th at the minute.
That sounds about right. Okay, so he has him about 12. The general consensus seems to be that he's still lurking in that like 8 to 15 range. I think this opinion is going to drop by the next like massive edition of rankings coming out, especially with the next Bob McKenzie one. Chalet started the season off already coming in on like a high momentum ride because he had a really effective D-1 season. He was one of the better looking prospects coming into the year. He was looked at as a top 10 contender. He had a terrific Hlinka tournament, which is always a good way to start the year. You definitely don't lose top 10 status if you're coming in with it and then start strong. And then he went to club play, and he was absolutely fantastic. First 7 or 8 games, I believe he scored in each game, or was roughly 7 or 8 points in those games. He was making all sorts of awesome complex passes around the offensive zone and pro league. He looked really, really good and really good at weaponizing space and capitalizing on it. And then he kind of went a little cold. And this coldness has lasted all year almost, to the point where he still has only 11 points in 39 games when he started with like 5 and 7. That's a pretty rough stretch to go.
What kind of player are you getting with Riley Heidt?
Riley Height's an exceptional playmaker. I think that's the biggest thing with his game. I think he's a guy that he's played at center. He's played on the wing. I think he probably projects, in my opinion, a little bit more towards the wing at the next level. But he's a very, very good playmaker, incredibly skilled passer, has an outstanding vision in the offensive zone. He's very good in transition as well. He's one of these players that you look at his game, and while you'd like for him to kind of take some of the risk taking out of his game a little bit, that's kind of what makes him special as well. So I think that's the big thing with him, is you want him to refine things, but not really change his game up that much, because he has all sorts of offensive skill. His shot's going to need work. I think at the end of the day, he's not going to be a big goal scorer at the next level. So that's kind of limiting his potential, limiting his ceiling, and that's why he's down the board a little bit. But at the end of the day, this is a guy that tied with Logan Stankoven for 4th in WHL scoring. He had 97 points, almost 100 points on the year. And he scored more than guys like Andrew Cristall. And while Cristall had some injuries that kind of prevented him from surpassing Heidt, Height's a very, very good player who's driving a lot of the offense on that Prince George team.
And that's it. That's all 29 players that I profiled this season. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Hopefully, if you guys are still here at the end, you can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Forster, JAKOBFORSTER. I want to give a huge shout out thanks to Tony Ferrari, Will Scouch, Sam McGilligan, Joel Henderson, Hadi Kalakesh, Jared Brown, Sebastian High, Patrick Bexell, and some people that I am definitely missing. They were all awesome. They gave up their time and time again to come and talk to me about prospects, and they were instrumental in kind of putting this together. Special shout out to Sam McGilligan, who I sent my initial ranking to, and he was like, hey, this isn't terrible. So shout out to him. You can find all of those guys. I'll put their Twitter destinations in the episode notes as well, so you can go follow those guys if you want to learn more about the draft. And apart from that, I will see you all immediately after the draft, when hopefully the Blue Jackets will have at least one shiny new prospect. This has been Locked On Blue Jackets. Until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.